I'm Lee Bristow, host of Saros Insights and Director of Cyber and AI Governance. At Saros, we partner with the world's most recognized brands to make the complex simple. My aim is to deconstruct the strategies of Ireland's top business leaders, from AI governance, digital transformation, and some that are even scaling through acquisition. We're playing a bigger game, uncovering the human stories behind the technology. Welcome to our show. Today we're sitting with Michael, Head of Data and AI at EirGrid. You now lead data and AI for one of the most critical environments in Ireland. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope to do a fantastic job at it.
I have absolutely no doubt. So I think one of the things that I would like to kind of jump in at is around teams and leadership in AI, right? And it is becoming commonplace for organizations to say that they are data-led, AI-first organization, but technology is really the hard part. It's really the people. So how do you move businesses from being AI curious to AI effective?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're right. I mean, a lot of companies say they're data-driven, AI-driven, but when you actually take the peels back, you find actually it's not the case. The technology is not the hard part. The technology is actually the easy part, and keeping up with the technology can be somewhat of a challenge. But really, what you want to get is the foundations from the team, the culture correctly. I think one of the most important things that I've found in my career in data and AI, it's education, it's data and AI literacy.
Yeah.
It's getting people to understand what the data means to them, what the data means to the organization, and the importance of that data. For years, companies have been taking data for granted. I mean, I remember years ago in my previous company, it was an afterthought. And I'm happy to say, I'm delighted to say that when I took this new role in EirGrid, it actually isn't an afterthought. It's actually in the forefront of any conversations we're having, which is fantastic.
Oh.
So for me, really, that cultural shift is about understanding data and AI, what you can do and what you can't do. And I think that's important as well.
When you have that cultural shift, there is often kind of almost two camps, if you will. You have the enthusiast and you have the skeptic,
Yes.
right? And I don't think either is particularly good. You need the informed, but
Correct.
So how do you actually bring the enthusiast and the skeptic into a digital transformation that actually works at the scale that EirGrid needs?
EirGrid strategy, one of the areas of EirGrid strategy is digitally driven. And that effectively means is that we incorporate our AI and data technology across the business to support the business in a variety of the different areas. Bringing in those people with the different mindsets is about understanding what problems they want to solve. Having an educated discussion with them to understand if this is the problem you want to solve, what actually is the best way of doing it. A lot of people think, that AI is a silver bullet that's going to solve all these issues. It isn't. There needs to be some realism put in place and context put in place as well. And it's really having a conversation with people, understanding what problem they want to solve, and then designing a solution utilizing what I call AAA, automation, analytics, or AI, with data as the centerpiece of this.
Yeah.
The skeptics like a slow, easy approach, which is perfectly fine, and I don't disagree with them. The enthusiasts want everything to be done like this. The enthusiasts, what I tend to do is give an understanding of what can be done and what shouldn't be done. We're managing a critical infrastructure, right? We need, one of the strategic pillars in EirGrid is keeping Ireland powered. And what effectively that means is that, we need to ensure that there's reliability and security within the grid. Enthusiasts, when I have a discussion with them about this, and I bring up that in the frame of the conversation, they suddenly realize, okay, you're right, we need to take baby steps. The skeptics understand it from, okay, I have these problems. If AI analytics automation can solve it, then I bring them on that journey. And it's for me, it's about bringing everyone on that journey, but identifying where the problem is first.
So how do you know that that message has actually genuinely landed with them? So with the enthusiasts and the skeptics, what is the language that they start using? What are the signals you're looking for that you know they're ready to move on?
When they come back,
Um,
you see, I'll give you a fantastic example. We're working quite closely now with the control room. The control room is the heart, is the centerpiece of how we are managing our grid.
yeah.
And again, the control room are skeptics, which I completely agree with them, right? One of the core pillars is keeping the lights on, right? Or rather keeping our empowered. We need to ensure that we're not doing anything that's going to put that at risk. So what we do with the control room is working with them to say, what are your problems that you're having now that is not related to managing the critical infrastructure, but is really the ecosystem around it, and how can we help? And we've identified a couple of use cases with them, and now they're coming back to us with more. They're saying, that's fantastic. We're trying out that proof of value, and it actually is working. Can we do more? Asset management is another great example. Another one of our pillars in EirGrid is building the backbone, a grid for growth. And part of that is, we have 381 transmission projects that are going to be happening in the next several years. That's a massive amount of projects.
Yeah.
One of the biggest aspects is planning it from an asset perspective. We're working with our asset management team and have identified use cases to support them. They're coming back as well saying, guys, this is fantastic. Can we do more? Because they recognize that even the small pieces, even the small problems that they can solve very quickly will help them immensely as part of their overall exercise. And that's inherent in several of the areas that we're working with now. So for me, the gauge of success is when people come back and ask, can you help us with this? Can you help us with that?
So I want to kind of take a broader look, because you've gone into quite a bit of detail. So if you kind of look across critical infrastructure in Ireland, where do most organizations get their data foundations wrong?
I think a lot of organizations get the data foundations wrong at source. So they don't actually understand where the data is coming from, who owns the data, and how that data is being managed. I think a lot of organizations have challenges in disparate data sources. So what I mean by disparate data sources is you have servers that have and databases that have one set of data, you have another that has another set of data. And you have one people manipulating one set, another people manipulating another set. And then when the dashboard comes out, everyone's thinking, what happened? Exactly. Where did this data come from? And everyone's scratching their head. So, one of the core foundations that I put in place, and it's backed up by the executive team, is mapping that data back to source.
Okay.
Having a single data owner, having a data steward, putting the right foundations in place. Where companies get this wrong is they don't do that. They immediately start going, oh, I want to do a dashboard. Well, we need this data. Let's go get this data. But they actually don't understand what the data actually is telling them. And they actually don't understand what the data is actually of a quality amount that represents the output properly. That's where organizations get it wrong. I've seen this time and time again. I've read a lot of the reports that people rush things. They rush through it. They think they want to have to get something done, but they forget the basics. For me, you need to get the basics. And in EirGrid, it's because if you look at the way that our strategy is formulated, it's really about harnessing the value of the data, but also understanding and getting the basics right.
So innovation speed versus risk tolerance. So, most organizations can't afford to fail fast, right? That's a Silicon Valley play thing, which they can, when they've got lots of money and not a lot of risk, that's what they can have. But in critical infrastructure, that's not something that you can experiment with at all. So how do you balance that speed of AI innovation that is coming down the line with actual proper risk management tolerance built into the process?
For me, it's a lot to do with ensuring that whatever you're you're developing from an AI perspective, you understand the problem that you're trying to solve, and you understand the journey it's going to make. And it's giving the confidence to the end user that the solution that you're delivering will actually give them benefit and results at the end of it. Rushing through this, in my experience, has never worked. I had a situation in my past role where that was done initially, and it failed on gigantic proportions. We can't afford this in EirGrid. So it's about taking baby steps and baby approaches. The advancements will always come. You're not going to stop AI advancements, but it's understanding what actually makes sense, right? It's contextualizing it in the way that will benefit the organization. And for me, it's that level of innovation is vital. It's for me, it's important. And what I've encouraged my team to do is during the proof of value stage, is to try to innovate as quickly as possible in the proof of value stage, working with the business. I mean, we've been working with our PMO organization, for example, in supporting them in several areas, and other parts of the organization. We're accumulating all these different proof of values and in innovating during that proof of value stage. At the end of it, that's where the key is at the end of it, because what you want to ensure is when you industrialize it, that there's value at the end of it.
You can't do every project, right? So how do you score value? Because you need to determine, is it based on a metrics? Is it based on the leader who shouts the loudest? I'm just thinking across industries as an industry expert in this. How do you actually create or how do you determine which is the project based on value?
It's a great question, and it's a hard one. I mean, for years, I've developed various different metrics across financial and non-financial metrics to measure the value of your use cases. And not one fits all. So what I've looked at in EirGrid is what are use cases that will deliver operational efficiencies? What are use cases that will deliver time gains? What are use cases that will effectively allow for the manual effort that a person does to be automated using artificial intelligence and allows them to be more innovative in their job?
Yeah.
Right. For me, that's a non-financial advantage, but it's a great overall benefit for the organization, because then you're freeing up people to actually think and do things differently and think themselves how they can improve. All you're doing is using AI to effectively complement that. So it's for me, those are the kind of value metrics that I'm looking at. I think there's a lot of value that we can deliver through AI. I don't think all of them are financial. So I'm trying to have a good mixture of both.
I'm going to do a little bit of a hard pivot to a slightly different part of the AI challenge and opportunity. So as an industry expert, when you consider things like the EU AI Act and compliance, governance, handbrake on innovation, all of these kinds of terms are thrown around when it comes to the EU AI Act. But some organizations are treating it as a checklist. Others are seeing it as an opportunity to build governance around it. As an industry expert, as a thought leader, how do you feel businesses should be approaching the EU Act?
Well, I think compliance is important. I think we need to have the right guardrails in place. I think in my opinion, there's a sweet spot that needs to be achieved between having the guardrails as set by the EU AI Act and the level of innovation that you can do within those guardrails. What we've done in EirGrid is we have a data and AI governance forum that meets once a month. And this forum effectively evaluates all those use cases. We make it very clear to everyone, we're not policing. We want innovations to happen, but we need to ensure that from a compliance perspective, we're not overreaching compared to the EU AI Act. I think it's going to be industry and company dependent, but there needs to be a level of innovation. I personally don't think the EU AI Act was initially established as a policing mechanism. It was there to ensure that we have robust cadence that we can monitor our progress on, but keeping it within the frame that allows society to develop. And it's the same thing that we're treating it as well.
I mean, principally, the EU acts as a product safety regulation.
Absolutely.
It would be seen very similar in the same light as a medical device, as an example.
Correct.
And I think you've just set that framework quite nicely in your articulation. So, what does good AI governance look like to you from a day-to-day perspective?
I think good AI governance to me is when the organization comes back freely and says, Michael, I have these 3 use cases I want to put into the governance forum, and I'm fairly confident that they will pass, but I want you to take a look at them. For me, the success factor is when there's a level of confidence in the organization for them to evaluate themselves and only come to me to say to validate their decision on those particular use cases that they're looking at. On a day-to-day basis, I see that as part of that education for people to understand, guys, it's not a policing mechanism. It's just it's a framework that we need to align with. That's not going to kill our innovation. I have one team in EirGrid that have a fantastic use case that they've been working on for a while, and they came over to me and they said, listen, we've listened to yourself and your colleagues talk about the EU AI Act. We understand it better now. We actually think that this actually is a very low risk use case. Can you help us evaluate it? That kind of interactivity from the organization is fantastic. And it shows success as well, because people then don't fear it. They actually accept it and use it as a guide.
AI is changing day to day. Fable this week, Fable 2.0 next week. How do we get above the hype and the noise to actually find real signals in terms of big industry moves that going, right, I see the path? And what are your ways? What are your tips and tricks to try and find that signal and move away from the hype and the noise?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I had this conversation just 2 days ago in relation to Claude versus GPT, Mistral. You're always going to get fluctuations, and there's always going to be other developments. For me, it's about contextualizing it. If you use it, what are you going to use it for? How is it going to be applied? Is it purely a large language model, or is it going to be are you applying it in a RAG architecture for specific results? For me, it's about looking at the developments in the industry and then handpicking those developments that will actually solve problems, real life problems in the organization. I think that the challenge with a lot of companies is that they see AI and they think, wow, I need to be on board. But they don't define a problem as to why they're bringing it on board. So they put a lot of investments in, but when they, at the end of the story, they can't contextualize how that actually is helping them in the business. They spend more effort putting it in than they're actually getting out of it. For me, if I was to advise anyone, I would say first identify what exactly is the problem you want to solve, and then understand and contextualize that from a model perspective to see how that solution is going to help you solve that problem.
So, again, slight hard pivot, AI, energy, and the decade ahead, right? So EirGrid is in a unique position where it is utilizing AI as a tool, but it is also one of the fastest growing sources of demand going forward. So just in terms of this technology and thinking about the energy footprint, what do leaders need to be thinking about when they're implementing AI, when they're deploying AI, when they're developing AI solutions, and the impact on energy and the environment?
Yeah. So for me, the implementation of that is, so from an EirGrid point of view, if I look at how I would like to look at it, how I'd like to apply from an EirGrid point of view.
Yeah.
For me, it's about, the first thing is about building the trust in the organization, that what we need to, what the AI can deliver, is actually going to be a positive outcome at the end of it.
Yeah.
And, there's no false negatives, there's no, or rather positive negatives, there's no hallucinations, there's nothing that's going to be detrimental to the grid. I think what a lot of organizations fail to understand is when they deploy AI capabilities, the tokens that sit on the back end of it is being ramped up on a continuous basis. So if you're using a cloud provider, then there's a cost associated with that. And if you don't understand the cost profile of that, and you're implementing models not effectively and not to solve a particular issue, your cost profile is just going to suddenly increase. From an EirGrid point of view, I want to take baby steps as part of that. The organization needs to first understand what problem we're going to solve and what is the cost profile in solving that problem, because we may find an easy way of doing it that's going to be a lot less costly, while at the same time have the same results. So for me, it's the energy usage is not only about how much processing that AI is going to be using up, but the cost associated with that's resulting from the tokens that it's being generated from.
Yeah. So EirGrid has a stated target of 80% in renewable energy, right? How do you think AI will support EirGrid in achieving that target?
Yeah, so it's a good question. It is a challenging target. We're well on our way, but I think AI will help us so when we're looking at the integration on onshore and offshore of both wind, solar, and conventional, it's about AI will effectively help us better understand from a planning perspective how we need to plan that integration. Yes. So I was mentioning before the 381 transmission projects that are happening. AI is very effective in supporting that particular type of planning exercises. It'll also help us start understanding with the right data sets and forecasting the level of energy that we're importing into the grid, both from all those sources. Given the capacity and the reliability of the grid, it'll help us in all those dimensions. But we need to take effectively baby steps in order to do that. So I think AI and data will play a vastly important role in us achieving that target. And the level of work that we're doing in EirGrid right now in order to achieve it is just immense, and AI will complement that by far.
Yeah, I think you have touched on it a little bit in terms of the demand forecasting, in terms of the real-time control decisions, and of course that big rollout. But I think it is really interesting how much AI is actually going to play a part in that transformation. So, Michael, thank you very much for joining us today. I really, really appreciate it, and it was a great conversation.
That's great. Thank you very much for having me.